Good morning. We've been looking at the encounter with God as a series, and in this series, we have till now seen two parts already. This is the third part of that series, and in the third part, what we are going to see is how your vision, your purpose in life, changes when you encounter God. Just as a reminder, what we have seen in the previous parts of the series is that we saw that there are four biblical perspectives of God encounters. And the first one is that if we are not watchful, we might miss an opportunity to have the encounter with God. And second is that the encountering God is entirely up to us, because an encounter requires two people, and the first party is always there, always present, always willing. So it's really up to us to have that encounter, seek and have that encounter. The third point that we saw was that the God encounters are for everyone, not just the spiritually mighty, not just the highly educated, not just the godly people, but it is meant for everyone. It doesn't include on your heritage or on your qualifications or anything of that sort. And the fourth perspective that we saw is that God encounters are not a one time experience. It needs to be had over and over and over again. Last week, we looked at the deeply personal nature of encounters. We came to the conclusion that immaterial of whether you're sitting in a mega church or whether you're sitting in a small group, when you have an encounter with the Maker, it is a one-to-one affair. It is just between you and the Maker. There is nobody else. So it doesn't really matter where you are. It is an intensely personal experience, right? And then we looked at it through the changes and then we saw that every encounter will essentially result in a change in you, right? In a change in us. And then we saw that through the life of Paul, and then also through the life of Jacob. Now, Paul's change was drastic. Jacob's change was gradual, right? But immaterial of whether it is gradual or drastic, changes will happen, and that is the beauty of of the encounter with God. And as indicated last week in my book, Not So With You, I have categorized these changes into three imperatives. And these three imperatives, I have named them as vision, character, and relationships. So today, we dig deeper into the imperative of vision. What's vision? Now, when you hear the word vision, you will normally think that, okay, it's for the leaders, it's for the big people, it's for the top guns of the church, of the organization, etc., etc. Not so. Not so. It is required for each one of us. Each one of us need to be able to answer that one particular question. What's the purpose of my life here? Why am I here? Why am I on earth? Right? So while visioning is important aspect of leaders, it is equally important for each one of us. Let's see what happened to Paul and his vision, his purpose in life when we had an encounter with Jesus. We're going to study Paul and the changes that happened in Paul and see how God's vision came through in Paul's life through the continuous encounters that we had. So, as we saw last week, also a change in vision is very evident in the life of Paul after each of his encounters. Now, his first encounter on the road to Damascus completely changed his vision and his purpose of life. Right? What was his vision before he went to Damascus? His vision is actually described in the opening verses of Acts chapter 9. Acts chapter 9, 1 to 2 clearly states this. Then Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked letters from him to the synagogues of Damascus, so that if he found any who were off the way, whether men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. So that was his vision. That was his purpose. He considered that his purpose was primarily to look for people who followed the way, look for people who worship this person called Jesus, and bind them and bring them to Jerusalem and fill the jails of prisons of Jerusalem. So that was all his all his vision or purpose in life was. And then the road on the road to Damascus, he has this encounter, and his change in vision for life is immediate and dramatic, right? The word says immediately he preached the Christ in the synagogues, that he is the Son of God. Then all who heard him were amazed and said, "Is this not the one who destroyed and who called his name in Jerusalem and has come here for that purpose, so that he might bring them bound to the chief priests?" But Saul increased all the more in strength and confounded the Jews who dwelt in Damascus, proving that this Jesus is the Christ. Acts 9:20 to 22. So you see, his vision of locating and binding the followers of the way and bringing them to prison changed from persecuting the Christians to preaching Christ, right? Immediately. So he starts preaching Christ. But I will still like us to notice one thing. As Acts 9:22 says, Paul increased all the more in strength and confounded who? Confounded the Jews who dwelt in Damascus, proving that Jesus is the Christ. So what does that tell you? That Paul went to Damascus, and after his 180-degree turnover of the vision, he is preaching to the Jews. He is preaching to the Jews. So his vision has changed from persecuting the Christians to preaching Christ, but his vision is still narrow in the sense that he is still preaching only to the Jews. When does that change? That changes during his second encounter. The second encounter, which is described in Acts 22:17 to 21, follow with me as I read it for you. Acts 22:17 to 21. If you read it, now it happened that when I returned to Jerusalem and I was praying in the temple, that I was in a trance and saw him saying to me, "Make haste and get out of Jerusalem quickly, for they will not receive your testimony concerning me." So I said, "Lord, they know that in every synagogue I imprisoned and beat those who believe on you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I also was standing by consenting to his death and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him." And then he said to me, "Depart, for I will send you far from here to the Gentiles." Acts 22:17 to 21. Now, what we see here is beautiful. What we see here is that even though his vision, his purpose took a 100-degree turn, Paul still wanted to witness in familiar surroundings, isn't it? Jesus is telling him that, look, your testimony will not be accepted in Jerusalem. And Paul is sort of defending his case. So Paul is making a strong case for himself to stay in Jerusalem and preach in Jerusalem, because he says that, hey, these guys know me. These guys know what I was in the past, and that could be an advantage for me. That is, my previous connections with the Jews will work and might be in my favor. He's actually making a strong case for himself, right? In other words, he's reluctant to expand his horizons and impact. He's reluctant to enhance or expand his horizons and impact. That is where Jesus makes it very clear to him in the encounter that his purpose for him is to witness to the Gentiles and not just to the Jews. Paul's vision changes from witnessing to familiar crowd to witnessing the unfamiliar crowd after that second encounter. After the second encounter, so his vision gets broadened. His vision gets broadened from a narrow vision of preaching to the Jews. It becomes preaching and witnessing to the Gentiles and to the entire world. And again, as we saw in the last week, his third encounter confirms his vision to go to a different environment all over again, right? Acts 23:11 says, "But the following night the Lord stood by him and said, 'Be of good cheer, Paul, for as you have testified for me in Jerusalem, you must also bear witness at Rome.'" Now we're going to analyze this a little bit, right? Now, if you go through the progress in the book of Acts, and by Paul's own admission, Paul had wanted to go to Rome many times. Paul had wanted to go to Rome many times. Now, if those of you who study the timelines of different epistles will probably know that the book of Romans was written most probably when Paul was in Corinth. Maybe in Acts chapter 20, we can't be sure, but that's the most accepted view, that he wrote it when he was in Corinth. Now, in that letter, written much before he reached Jerusalem in Acts 22 and 23, now remember, he reaches Jerusalem in Acts 22, and he is in Corinth writing to the Romans in Acts chapter 20. And in that letter, Paul confirms his desire to visit Rome and witness to them. How do we know that? How do we know that? It's very simple. If you read Romans 1, 8 to 15, it will convince you. Romans 1, 8 to 15. First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all, that your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world. For God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of his Son, that without ceasing I make mention of you always in my prayer, making request, if by some means, now at last, may I find a way in the will of God to come to you. He's talking to the Romans, right? For I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gifts, so that you may be established. That is, that I may be encouraged together with you by the mutual faith, both of you and me. Now, I do not want you to be unaware, brethren, that I often planned to come to you. I often planned to come to you, but was hindered until now, that I might have some fruit among you also, just as among other Gentiles. I am a debtor both to Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. So as much as is in me, I am ready to preach the gospel to you who are in Rome also. Very clear expression of his desire to preach the gospel to the Gentiles in Rome. Right? So Paul had a personal vision to witness in Rome, but obviously many hurdles were coming his way. Many hurdles came his way, and it is in Jerusalem, after facing the mob fury and after surviving the division in the Sanhedrin, and probably one of the most dangerous situations of where he might be losing his life altogether, either to the mob or to the Sanhedrin, that Jesus encounters him and confirms, saying, Paul, you had a vision to go to Rome, I will make it happen. So, sort of, Jesus is confirming Paul's vision, Paul's desire to witness in Rome, right? But what happens after Jesus' confirmation is even more beautiful. What happens after Jesus' confirmation is that how the circumstances around Paul changes to make this vision come true. God makes him through a tumultuous journey filled with accusations, trials, procrastinations, dangers, famine, tempest, shipwrecks, snake bites. And these are all acts described in Acts chapter 23, 12 onwards, till Paul lands in Rome in Acts chapter 28, 16. So if you really look at Acts chapter 23 to Acts 23, 12 to Acts 28, 16, you can see how God orchestrates everything around him, right? Including the procrastination by Felix, including the defense with King Agrippa, including his appeal to Caesar, which ultimately makes it impossible to Felix to do anything but to send him to Rome. And then, of course, the tumultuous journey towards Rome, where anything could have happened. He could have lost his life so many times: famine, shipwreck, tempest, snake bite, you name it, right? Now he survives all that, and lands in Rome because in the third encounter with Jesus, Jesus confirmed his vision to him. Jesus said, be not afraid. Just as you have witnessed in Jerusalem, you will witness in Rome also. So, looking back, we see how Paul's vision is getting changed every time he had an encounter with Christ. It does not just change, it becomes bigger every time he has an encounter. It becomes bigger every time he has an encounter, right? After the first encounter, he started witnessing to the Jews. After the second encounter, he broadens the scope and impact of his ministry to include the Gentiles. And after the third encounter, he becomes more determined to witness in Rome, which is the power center, and all that stuff. That's what an encounter with Jesus will do to you. Right? Jesus does not ask us to be happy with small victories, nor be sad with present difficulties. Instead, he asks us to look beyond present setbacks and present victories and dream big. That's what he does. Jesus wants us to have a higher purpose, a higher vision than what we have in our limited in our limited limited ability to understand, right? In our limited ability to understand. So, if you really look at you know Jesus's life and Jesus's advice to people, you would find that this is not the only time he does that. He actually does that multiple times, right? In John 13, Jesus demonstrated the servant leadership act by washing the feet of the disciples, including the feet of the disciple whom he knew was going to betray him. And then after that, he starts talking to his disciples about his own death. Right? John 13, 31 to 35 is where he specifically talks about the need for him to go to Jerusalem and die. And hearing this, obviously, the disciples are troubled and sad. All of us would be, right? And that's when Jesus turns the table around and he says in John chapter 1, John 14, 1 to 4, he says, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in me, believe in God, believe in also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where I go, you know the way you know." John 14, 1 to 4. Now, these are very comforting words, right? Aren't they? But for a moment, I want us to go beyond the comfort that these words provide and see another message. Another message. Jesus is telling the disciples effectively, look beyond what is the immediate hurdle that they might be facing. The immediate hurdle that they are going to face is that he's not going to be physically with them anymore. And they are troubled with that. And Jesus is telling them, guys, don't go and look at the immediate setback or the immediate hurdle, but consider the future. Consider the big picture. I am going to prepare a place for you, so that when you come, you will have a place. You can be with me. Jesus is asking them to dream big. He had done this earlier also, actually. He had done this earlier. If you turn to Luke chapter 10, we can see that he is sending the disciples two by two, and in different parts of the country to preach the gospel and to work miracle in those places which Christ himself desired to visit, to make a way for his visit and ministry. And Jesus empowers them to heal the sick, spreading the gospel, and gives them detailed instructions of what to do, what not to do, etc., etc., etc. Now, the disciples go out, and when they return, they are triumphant. They are triumphant, right? And Luke 10:17 says, "Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name." I want you to just imagine the mindset of these people. These are ordinary fishermen and tax collectors and whatever else, right? And they have been able to do something wonderful, something magical, something miraculous in Jesus' name. So they're thrilled, and they come back and share their excitement with Jesus, saying, "Jesus, even the demons are subject to us in your name," right? That we can do amazing things. We can heal the sick. We can drive out the demons, and they are wonderfully doing well. In a corporate jargon, these would be probably be known as the top performers in the organization. But what does Jesus do? What does Jesus do? Very interesting. Jesus says in Luke 10:18 to 20, Jesus says, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Behold, I gave you the authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Now comes the punchline. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven. Now, he's not putting a dampener on their excitement. He's saying that, guys, you did well. You did a great thing. And do not just be happy because you did something great now. Think big. Think of the future. Think of a bigger picture. Think of what can be done. Because I know what you have done is possible, because I have empowered you, because I have told you that that anyone who has faith in me will do what I have been doing. He will do even greater things than that, because I'm going to the Father. So sure, you have done some great things, but do not delight in those. Do not delight over those. This is nothing compared to what I have in offer for you, or what I offer you. I'm offering you eternal life. I'm offering you a place in the book of life. I'm offering you a permanent place where I am going. Do not rejoice because of these minor achievements. Rejoice because your names are written in the book of life. That's the ultimate. That is the ultimate. Now, once again, Jesus is telling them to see beyond the immediate. He is asking them to see what lies ahead. He is asking them to be excited about the future. He is asking them to dream big. In both these incidents, Jesus' message is very clear. Do not be satisfied with immediate positive results, nor be disheartened with immediate disappointments. Do not narrow your vision because of today's successes or today's failures. Keep the big picture in mind, keep the higher purpose in mind. Dream big. That's truly the beauty of an encounter with God. It changes your vision for good. Paul's vision changed every time he had an encounter with Jesus. From persecuting to witnessing to Jews, to witnessing to the whole world. And to highlight of this is that it was all about God's vision for Paul. God's vision for Paul was told by Jesus to Ananias. It's Ananias at the very beginning. God revealed his vision for Paul in Acts 9:15-16. He says, Go, for he is a chosen vessel of mine to bear my name before Gentiles, kings, and the children of Israel, for I will show him how many things he must suffer for my name's sake. Go, for he is a chosen vessel of mine to bear my name for Gentiles, kings, and the children of Israel. Almost the entire world, right? And then we will see that Paul's change in vision was very much in line with what God God had as a vision for him. Vision for him. And Paul did just that. Paul did just that, right? Paul ends up doing just that. God had for him, the vision that he had. He continued witnessing to he continued witnessing to the Gentiles, right? He witnessed to King Agrippa, kings. He continued witnessing to the Jews, even though his primary target was the Gentiles. He was literally living his vision that God had given for him in Acts 19:15-16. Acts 9:15-16. Let me close with my own testimony once more. I told you about my conversion story in the past 2 weeks, and I'm going to tell you about you know how Jesus encountered me even after I accepted Him, continued His encounter with me even after I accepted Him as my Savior and Lord. Now, my immediate reaction after my conversion was obviously delight, joy, happiness, right? But I was also very proud. I was proud that this conversion was a result of my actions. I was proud that I made this choice. I was proud that I made the right decision. I was proud that I did the right thing. I chose the right God. I joined this right club and all that stuff. I was proud about what I did. proud about what I did, and I would have been very happy to stay with that, right? I wouldn't have bothered to probably do anything more with it, because I was already proud with what I did, and I would have been very happy to rest on what we call as the rest on my laurels, right? Hey, I converted, right? And I went against my family's wishes, and incurred the wrath of my mother. She almost excommunicated me. Ridicule of my friends who were still non-believers. And so I made my sacrifices. Nothing more could be asked of me. That was my way of looking at it. But Jesus had a different plan for me. Jesus had a different plan for me. And that I already told you, his encounter with me was through the pages of the Bible. And it was through those pages of the Bible that he spoke to me from John 15:16, where he clearly told me, "You did not choose me. You did not choose me. But I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should remain. You did not choose me. I chose you." That is Christ telling me. He literally hit me hard with that verse several times before I realized what it meant for me. What happened was, it gave me a life mission. It gave me a life mission. It made me get up from my comfort zone and do something with all the talent that he had given me. It gave me an entirely different vision for my life. And that's when I actually got into the ministry of training people to use the leadership knowledge that I have to do my PhD, and to drive servant leadership, Jesus's model of leadership in corporate world as well as in Christendom. Jesus, when he encounters you, he makes sure that your vision gets changed. It happened with Paul, it happened with me, it will happen to you. So this morning, I want you to ask yourself, what change is God asking you to make in your vision, in your purpose in life? Has God given you a vision? Have you asked him for it? Have you sought one? Is your vision too narrow? Are you happy to rest on today's laurels, or are you constrained by today's troubles? If it is so, if any of them are true, it is time for for us to seek a fresh encounter with Jesus. A fresh encounter with Jesus. So let's just do that this Sunday, every Sunday. Let us just continue to seek a fresh encounter with our God. And through that, make changes in our vision, character, and relationships. Thank you. Thank you very much.